didn't want to be a half-blood. If you think you might be one of us, my advice is turn away while you still can.
The opening monologue of the book was basically a massive fourth wall joke, with Percy telling the reader to put the book down if anything feels familiar to them. This set the tone for the rest of the story. The fact that they dropped that angle and made it more straightforward should immediately be raising some red flags.
I'm 12 years old. Am I a troubled kid?
Okay, for some reason the show decided to remove some crucial context from one of the first lines of narration. In the book, it actually makes sense for Percy to be posing this question, since it came immediately after he said he attended a school for troubled kids.
That's me, back in 2nd grade.
Percy in this show is depicted with Walker Scobell's natural blonde hair and blue eyes, while in the book he had black hair and green eyes like Poseidon.
I could have sworn I saw something. When you say you saw something like that, you wind up in this guy's office.
Percy was not branded a troubled kid for having an overactive imagination. He was branded a troubled kid because he kept getting blamed for accidents that nearly got his classmates killed, like a school bus getting blasted with a Revolutionary War cannon, or his class falling into an aquarium shark tank. Mythomagic is a real card game in the Riordanverse, but Percy never played it himself. In fact, he doesn't seem to have even known it existed until The Titan's Curse, the 3rd book in the series. And I suppose I should address the elephant in the room. We can all see it, no use pretending it isn't there. Yeah, Grover looks about the same age as Percy, when he should look a couple years older with acne and peach fuzz. The show only gives us an establishing shot of the school bus driving to the museum, but in the book it was the setting for the entire first scene, where Percy's friendship with Grover, rivalry with Nancy, and poor standing with the school staff are all established.
The gods.
Okay, let's get to the real elephant in the room. Mr. Brunner is supposed to have brown hair, not gray.
Now, on your worksheets.
There was no written portion of the museum tour in the book. It was basically just a lecture. This seems to be here to set up a flashback. Okay, I suppose that if the movie got a send-off for visualizing Percy's dyslexia, the show should get one too.
Perseus. That's me.
This flashback is entirely original to the show and has no basis in the books. It seems to be here to illustrate the significance of Percy's name and set up some stuff for the Medusa episode later on.
Not everyone who looks like a hero is a hero. And not everyone who looks like a monster is a monster.
Okay, you could say that about literally any other Greek hero and it would fit with the themes of the books. But Perseus? Perseus was basically a paragon of virtue in the books. Even when he killed Medusa, he didn't have a choice and hated that he had to do it.
And at night, his mother would whisper in his ear, "Hold fast, Perseus."
This line has no basis in the book or in mythology. I guess the writers thought Percy Jackson needed a set of arc words.
Percy?
Mom?
This is not how Percy ended up embarrassing himself at the museum. He embarrassed himself by telling Nancy to shut up in the middle of Mr. Brunner's lecture.
When you're ready to hear what the gods have in store for you, they'll tell you.
Chiron, you know you're supposed to be in hiding right now, right? Maybe try something with more plausible deniability, like, "What you learn from me is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such." Also, Mr. Brunner used Percy's outburst as an opportunity to review the story of Kronos and the Titan War with him, setting up both the dynamic of the Big Three and the overarching plot of the series. The show completely skips over that.
And I believe you'll be needing this.
Mr. Brunner didn't give Riptide to Percy during his lesson. He tossed the sword to him while he was being attacked, and demanded her back immediately after. Percy doesn't get to keep her until he sets off on his quest. It doesn't even make sense for him to give her to him now, because he doesn't know for sure that Percy is the one he's been waiting for, or that he's in any danger at the moment. Hey, where's all the storm clouds? The book took the time to note that freak weather events were ramping up pretty much right from the start. Would have been nice to see something on the horizon, even if they didn't call attention to it.
No, if there's one thing I know about bullies, it is that you should never, ever stand up to them.
Grover's reasoning for stopping Percy from hurting Nancy was much more pragmatic in the book. There, it had been established that Percy was already on probation, and Grover just didn't want him getting expelled.
Oops.
Really, Nancy? Plain cheese? The Nancy Boba Fett I know throws peanut butter and ketchup sandwiches. That's a suitably disgusting food choice.
Percy?
Percy did not do this. He actually stayed sat by the fountain while the water grabbed her. I honestly don't know why they changed that. Not only does it make for a worse visual, but it makes the "I didn't touch Nancy" line feel more hollow because he was clearly going to do it either way. Riptide wasn't a sneakoscope. The only advance warning Percy ever got for a monster attack was Grover's nose. This never even happens again in the later episodes. Why did they bother showing it here?
It was only a matter of time before we found you.
Mrs. Dodds did not attack Percy in broad daylight. She pulled him away from the tour group and led him to a secluded area of the museum. It was actually a pretty tense sequence. She even teleports around like a slasher villain. I guess this is meant to set up the mist, but I thought the book already did a good enough job of that just by having everyone forget Mrs. Dodds existed. Also, Mrs. Dodds didn't communicate with Percy telepathically like this. She just spoke to him normally. The kindly ones were not reptilian. They looked more like shriveled old bats. This is not how Percy killed Mrs. Dodds. Percy was taken by surprise when Riptide turned into a sword, but the blow that killed Mrs. Dodds was a very deliberate slash.
Is he dead?
Percy did not pass out after the museum fight. He just walked out of the museum wondering what the hell he just saw.
The truth can be so very hard to determine. But in this case, the truth seems very hard to deny.
While it does make for a nice opportunity for a creator cameo, this scene never happened. As far as everyone at Yancy was concerned, Percy was properly punished for pushing Nancy into the fountain by Mrs. Kerr, the replacement math teacher. Percy's eventual expulsion was basically just because he stopped giving a damn and didn't hold back from mouthing off at his teachers for the rest of the year.
Mr. Underwood, do you have anything to add?
Percy had told me earlier in the day that he wanted to get back at Nancy for all she'd done to us.
Grover?
And he isn't being truthful about what happened at the fountain.
Grover?
Excuse me.
Grover would never throw Percy under the bus like this. In fact, when Mrs. Dodds came after him for pushing Nancy, Grover immediately tried to take the blame himself. But I guess we gotta have forced drama between the best friends. Percy was not expelled from Yancy Academy on the spot. He was allowed to complete the 6th grade, he just wasn't allowed back for the start of 7th. As a result of this change, we completely miss out on Percy eavesdropping on Grover and Mr. Brunner outside his office, and all the foreshadowing in that scene.
I didn't touch Nancy.
I know you didn't. At least, I know you think you didn't. I suspect you are special. So much more so than you know.
Just stop.
This is not how Percy's last conversation with Mr. Brunner went. Mr. Brunner's attempts to reassure Percy after a disastrous final exam genuinely backfire because Percy misinterprets Mr. Brunner's words about him finding where he belongs as an admission that he never had faith in him to begin with. It's pretty heartbreaking. I would have liked to have seen it unfold on screen. Maybe they just thought it was a bit out of character for Chiron? I don't know.
This is my ride. I'm going home.
Percy did not ride home on a busted-up pickup truck. He took the Greyhound bus. Also, Grover was supposed to accompany him home, but I guess the fact that Percy's leaving in the middle of the term puts the kibosh on that, too.
There's nothing wrong with falling in this building. Have you considered eating more fruit?
Hey, I eat plenty of fruit. Have you considered eating more fruit?
No. Hello, Percy.
Hey, Eddie. Sorry about that.
I'm walking out. You're walking in.
Gabe and Eddie were actually friends in the book. Don't get me wrong, Eddie did seem annoyed at how Gabe treated Percy, but he still came over for poker night.
Welcome home, genius.
Why does Gabe have a thick head of hair? He's supposed to be almost completely bald. Also, I guess Standards and Practices vetoed Gabe's cigars, huh? At least he gets to keep his beers.
My mom is the only one employed here.
Gabe was employed in the book. He was the manager of an electronics store in Queens. Granted, he never actually went to work, but he still had a job. Somehow.
What does it look like I'm doing right now?
Losing at imaginary
Gabe didn't play poker online. He played at a table with his real-life friends. Again, one of which was Eddie. Sally was away at work when Percy got home, not doing whatever this is. Couldn't they have at least had her wear the Sweet on America apron so we can see what she actually does for a living?
I'm really sorry. I tried this time. You know how hard I've been trying, but this time it really wasn't my fault. It really wasn't my fault.
Percy actually made an effort to stay upbeat when talking to his mother. They avoided the topic of his expulsion completely and tried to focus on the good stuff that happened during the school year.
And that I had enough time to pick up your welcome home gift.
Just a bag of hard candy, huh? In the book, Sally brought home a whole variety pack of blue candies, including jelly beans, taffy, and sour strings. Also, slight spoiler, but the show never explains the blue food throughout the season. Granted, the explanation seems to change from book to book, with it starting out as a power move against Gabe, and eventually just evolving into it's their favorite color. Still, it wouldn't hurt to give the audience some explanation for the gimmick.
Something happened to me.
Percy didn't tell Sally anything about what happened with Mrs. Dodds. He thought it would sound stupid.
Since when are you going to Montauk?
I called to reserve the place as soon as I got off the phone with Yancy.
The Montauk trip was not spur of the moment in the book. Sally needed to clear it with Gabe beforehand because he was in charge of the family's money.
Why exactly am I okay with this?
Because on my way home on Sunday, I'm gonna stop at D'Angelo's and pick up sandwiches in time for tip-up. But if you make this miserable, I'm gonna go anyway, and then I'm gonna eat my sandwich.
This is not how Sally won Gabe over on the idea of the Montauk trip. Again, he controlled the money, he had the power to stop her if he wanted to, and she knew that trying to argue with him would... well, it would not end well for her. She bribed him with the promise of 7-layer dip, and by offering to take the money for the trip out of her clothes budget.
And then I'm gonna eat my sandwich and yours while I listen to the game on the radio.
You know I hate watching the Knicks alone.
So do I!
Hang on a minute. Did the show just say that Sally enjoys doing anything with Gabe at all? I'm pretty sure she couldn't f***ing stand the guy and only put up with him for Percy's sake. Percy's first dream wasn't of talking to a man with a lantern on the beach. It was of a white horse fighting with a golden eagle. There was a voice goading them to fight, but it came from beneath the earth, not from a figure on the beach. Also, it's a little early for this dream to be happening. Percy had already spent a day in Montauk before he had his first dream. The weather was pretty clear when Percy and Sally arrived at the cabin. Clear enough for them to build a campfire, at least. It wasn't until right before the Minotaur attack that the weather took a turn for the worse.
Then we were at the museum and...
You saw something. What did she say to you?
How did you know it was a she?
Sally had no idea about the museum attack until Grover showed up and forced Percy to tell her. She seemed pretty shocked at the reveal.
Do you know why we come to this cabin every year?
Because it's near the septic tank, so it's cheap. Mom, how did you know about that thing I saw?
We come to this place every year because this is the place I met your father.
Percy already knew this. Sally had told him the story of how she met his father multiple times. It was practically a yearly tradition. Of course, she left out the part about him being a god, but she told him the story.
A long time ago, I met a man here on the beach. He was wise and brave and kind and noble. From the moment I first saw him, I knew that I had never met a man like him before.
Well, that's the vaguest story I've ever heard. In the book, Sally told Percy that his father was a rich man who had a secret affair with her, then sailed away for business and was never seen again.
Because he wasn't a man at all. He was a god.
Sally never told Percy that his father was a god. She was afraid that if he found out, he would have to go to camp, which she didn't want.
You fell in love with God? Like Jesus?
Okay, this is a pretty good joke, and fairly book accurate too. Percy does, in fact, confuse the first reference to the gods for a reference to God, with a capital G.
The stories that I have told you about Greek gods and heroes and monsters, they are real.
Percy's never said to have learned any Greek mythology from his mother. He learned pretty much everything from Chiron and Annabeth.
Wait, Mom.
I asked how the night. You said we could all leave in the morning.
Sorry, I'm early, but I didn't have any choice.
Wait, Sally and Grover planned this? In the book, Grover had to track Percy all the way from the Greyhound station, and Sally had no idea what was going on when he showed up.
I feel very good about how we're doing so far.
Grover!
What?
Grover, why is there half a goat in your pants?
Oh, it's...
Percy initially thought Grover's legs were donkey legs. This led to a funny little exchange where it turns out that's a horrible insult to satyrs.
What are you? I'm a satyr.
At this point in the story, Grover's horns are... Hang on, let me brighten up the screen here, I can't see shit. There we go. Anyway, as I was saying, at this point in the story, Grover's horns are supposed to be small enough that his hair hides them most of the time. It's not until he hits his growth spurt that he starts needing a hat to hide them full time.
If I hadn't gotten you kicked out of school, you'd have never survived the night.
You know, this might have made sense if Grover had tried to accompany Percy home like he did in the book. But instead, he basically left Percy unprotected for almost an entire day.
Well, none of us saw Dodds coming.
Grover knew that Mrs. Dodds was a monster well before the museum incident. He almost certainly didn't know she was a kindly one, but he did at one point warn Percy that she was dangerous, and again, tried to stop her from dragging him away at the museum.
The mist. It's the veil that hides the magical world from the human world.
It's a little early for this, isn't it? Grover does mention mist on the car ride, but the full explanation is saved for when Percy goes off on his quest.
The sooner we get you to camp, the better off you're... You told him about camp, right?
Not yet, no.
Sally actually did tell Percy about camp in the book. At least, the fact that there was a camp that his father wanted him to go to, but that she was afraid he would never come home from.
Camp is a sanctuary for half-bloods.
Jesus, why are we front-loading all of this exposition? Some of this stuff can wait, and did in the book.
Is that the Minotaur?
Percy didn't see the Minotaur until after the car crashed. And even then, he didn't recognize it immediately. He thought it was just some guy wearing a blanket over his head.
Boys? Yeah, I'm actually 24.
Grover was 28 in the book, which would make him the equivalent of a 14-year-old human. Seems odd at first, but then you realize that 4 years later, when the later books take place, Grover would be 32, which would make him equivalent to a 16-year-old, just like Percy. I guess they just didn't want to deal with all that now, but they better have a plan for how to deal with it going forward. None of this happened in the book. The car crash was the result of a lightning strike, not getting rammed by the Minotaur. Grover was actually knocked unconscious by the car running off the road. Percy had to help him out of the car, not vice versa. Anyone else getting a sense of deja vu?
Grover, I am entrusting you to protect my son, my only child.
Don't worry, Mrs. Jackson. Percy will be totally safe at camp.
Swear it.
What's happening?
Yeah, I'm with you, Percy. Sally was nowhere near this dramatic about leaving Percy with Grover. She basically just explained that the Minotaur was only after Percy and not her, and that she wouldn't be able to cross the boundary regardless.
You're gonna need to be brave now. Remember what I taught you. Remember the stories I told you, especially the stories they will tell you.
No way. Mom, I'm not leaving you.
Perseus!
Percy actually won this argument in the book. He and Sally ended up carrying Grover up the hill together, at least until the Minotaur caught up with them.
You are not broken. You are singular.
Again, more dramatic speeches that weren't in the book. Did the marketing department really need so many lines for the trailer? The Minotaur is supposed to be completely human-like apart from his head and chest. He did not have a full fur coat or bull-like legs. Also, he's supposed to have a nose ring. It was Percy who used a red raincoat as a matador flag, not Sally. This whole splitting up to confuse the Sen approach was not used in the book. The only reason they were split up was because they dove in different directions to evade the Minotaur's charge. And that's another thing. Sally was supposed to teach Percy how to dodge a charging Minotaur. Pretty useful skill if you ask me, no idea why they cut it. Sally did not disintegrate in the Minotaur's hand. She disappeared in a burst of golden light. As I said, Percy gave Riptide back to Mr. Brunner after killing Mrs. Dodds. He didn't have her for the fight with the Minotaur. Seriously, it's really bugging me how familiar this is starting to feel. Percy didn't just climb onto the Minotaur. He jumped onto the Minotaur mid-charge. You know, when I first saw this scene, I thought, finally they got the Minotaur horn scene right. But then I took a closer look and saw this score mark here from when Percy hit it with a sword earlier, and I realized, oh, he could only break it off because he weakened it with the sword. Which still undersells Percy's strength, since again, he didn't have Riptide when he fought the Minotaur. Percy stabbed the Minotaur in the chest with the horn, not in the head. Percy did not pass out immediately after defeating the Minotaur. He dragged Grover's unconscious body all the way to the big house before collapsing from... Okay, I've definitely said all this before. What is going on here?
He's waking. Everyone, give him some space, please.
I guess this is supposed to be the show's version of what Percy sees when he collapses on the big house porch. But in that scene, it was just Annabeth and Chiron, not an entire crowd of campers. Plot-wise, this episode feels like Mandela Effect Lightning Thief. So much of the book is here, but just a little bit off, which makes it weird to watch as a fan of the book. As for tone, I found it way too broody and melodramatic. The Lightning Thief wasn't exactly a goofball comedy, but Percy's narration had a clear sense of humor that kept things from getting too heavy. While this episode has moments like that, it seems way more interested in giving us a ton of angsty moments and bombastic speeches. On top of that, something about this episode makes it feel sluggish compared to the book. At first I was inclined to say it was the lack of action, but then I realized that the first 4 chapters were pretty light on action too. I think the real issue is that the book handles the downtime a lot better, with more organic dialogue and funny narration to keep the reader engaged. Overall, as a pilot, this shows a lot of promise, but still leaves a lot of room for improvement. The changes are subtle, but taken all together make it feel just off enough from the book that I'm just not quite feeling it. So, what do you do when everyone fails you? Am I just a stupid boy with nothing left to lose? So sick and tired, no desire to stay in this town. So hopeful